A glow in the abyss, the legend of the coral. A vast realm of shadows and mystery lies deep beneath the eerie waves of the ocean, where the sunlight can no longer penetrate. Down here, between submerged mountain crests and valleys carved by ancient currents, a profound silence reigns, and the stillness of the water seems almost oppressive. It may certainly appear to be a desolate and lifeless place. Yet the abyss is the guardian of wonders capable of defying all imagination. In this boundless darkness, a small bioluminescent coral shines alone, clinging to the seabed. Its light is faint, a delicate glow, barely enough to illuminate the nearby rocks. But it is constant, a small luminous oasis that resists in the darkness, just like a star in the night. The coral had lived in that lonely place for as long as it could remember. The abyss, with its immense and silent vastness, seemed to have no end, and the coral often wondered if its presence there could have any meaning. Huge, majestic creatures swam through those deep waters, passing him by. Giant squids, their tentacles dancing sinuously, ancient sea turtles, gliding with a quiet grace, and sleek sharks, cutting through the darkness with the precision of razor-sharp blades. Their presence was imposing, their every movement commanding attention. Yet amidst these spectacular figures, the small coral remained motionless and unnoticed, almost invisible to the eyes of those who passed by, a fragile glimmer in a world that seemed to ignore it. Every now and then, the currents brought echoes from faraway places. They told of lush coral reefs teeming with life, where the sun's rays filtered through crystalline waters, and schools of brightly colored fish darted among the corals. That little luminous being, he could only fantasize about a place so lively, so different from the silence and darkness that surrounded him. And yet, despite everything, he continued to shine, even when the darkness seemed eternal and his glow almost imperceptible. One night, however, a ghostly light suddenly illuminated the seabed, and casting eerie shadows between the rocks, it drew ever closer to the small coral. It was a lanternfish, a typical creature of the deep, which usually uses its glow as bait to attract prey. But that time it was not there for the sake of hunting. It stopped and remained still, observing the coral, its large eyes full of curiosity. "Why do you persist in shining so incessantly?" he asked in a deep, resonant voice. The coral was taken aback for a moment. It had never happened that anyone had spoken to it before, much less asked such a direct question. "I think it's just in my nature," he replied cautiously. His light wavered slightly at that moment, reflecting his own doubt. "It won't be much, but I think it's right to let my light shine." The lanternfish floated in the current, pondering those words. "But here, so tiny, and in this darkness where no one can see you, does it really make sense?" The coral did not stop shining. Its light remained stable and constant. Then, with a confident tone, he stated, "Perhaps even in the darkest depths, light has its purpose. I may never know who it reaches or how it serves, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter." At these words, the lanternfish remained silent for a moment, then turned and swam away, slowly disappearing into the darkness. The coral, watching him walk away, wondered hopefully if his words had had any impact. Immersed in his doubts, he began to feel small and insignificant again, a lonely light in a vast and indifferent ocean. Yet despite his uncertainty, he continued to shine, his dim light unwavering, a silent promise to the desolation that surrounded him. As time passed, the coral continued to stand firm in its corner of the abyss, still unaware of the waves of change it had triggered. The lanternfish, touched by his words, carried the story of that fragile but tenacious light to every creature he met along the way. And so it was that the legend of the small luminous coral spread further and further, whispered among the shadows of the ocean, carried by the currents up to the surface waters. One evening, the coral sensed something different. The current, usually cold and still, suddenly became warmer, softer, as if carrying with it a harbinger of novelty. Little by little, tiny creatures began to appear. They glowed with a soft light, in shades of green and gold, and they approached the coral delicately. They were plankton, irresistibly drawn to the coral's glow, like moths hypnotized by a flame. At first there were only a few, but soon more and more arrived, until the space around them was transformed into a luminous explosion. They moved like a vortex of life, a perfect harmony that animated the darkness of the abyss. What was once an endless shadow now lit up with color and movement. The deep ocean transformed into a symphony of pulsating lights, the plankton's glow intertwining in undulating patterns that seemed to breathe with the currents. The coral was speechless. It would never have imagined that its small and constant glow could give life to such a wonder. The abyss, once perceived as infinite and desolate, now pulsated with new possibilities. The coral no longer questioned the usefulness of its light. He had always had his purpose. He just had to find out what it was. The ocean remained vast and deep, but the darkness no longer frightened the coral. Its glow was proof that even the smallest sparkle can dispel darkness, and that even in the most remote and silent places, light can find its place to shine. We too, like coral, often feel small or insignificant. But our glow, our uniqueness, can make a difference. Even the weakest light can chase away shadows. This story teaches that every light matters, even the smallest. So never stop shining. Because you never know who you might inspire, or what change you might bring. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel and share it with those who need to remember that every small gesture has a meaning. And remember, in the darkness, your light is important. Thank you.